Well, you remember Colin Kaepernick? He is the unsuccessful quarterback who's benched for the immortal Blaine Gabbert and then who knelt for the national anthem and then made a lot of money for kneeling for the national anthem. Well, he's back now and he's going to make money off of absolutely destroying his own parents. Colin Kaepernick, according to our mainstream legacy media, he's one of the great victims of our society. Sure, he was a formerly successful quarterback who then started to not be very good, and then he got benched, and then he decided, after being benched, that America was a terrible racist place, and he started kneeling on the sidelines in order to protest supposed police brutality, and he became a cause celeb because he couldn't latch on with any other team, despite the NFL doing its very best to try and force another team to take him. And then he ended up on the cover of multiple Sports Illustrateds, and he ended up with a giant deal from Nike talking about how you have to kneel for something so that you'll stand for something and all the rest of this stuff. And he made millions of dollars off of being a racial protester. Well, now Colin Kaepernick has gone one step further, and it is emblematic of where we are in American society, what Colin Kaepernick has now done. Essentially, all victimology turns into, at a certain point, being Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. All victimology turns into it. It turns into disrespect for your parents, disrespect for the past, an attempt to separate off from your parents, from the past, to rip everyone who came before you, to make yourself the only pure human being. So the reason this is relevant is because yesterday, Colin Kaepernick decided that he was going to just start crapping publicly on his white adoptive parents. To understand how perverse this is, you have to understand that Colin Kaepernick was, again, adopted. He was born of apparently a Black American whose identity remains unknown to this day, that is his birth father, and a 19-year-old white woman from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, named Heidi Russo. And his mom, to her great credit, had the baby, and then also to her credit, put the baby up for adoption. And he was adopted, was Colin Kaepernick, by a white couple named Rick and Teresa Kaepernick. And the couple already had a couple of biological children, and the reason they decided to adopt Colin is because they had lost two other sons to heart defects, apparently. And his parents guided him through youth. He had a pretty nice background, pretty privileged background, economically speaking. He ended up playing sports, and of course, all the rest. Well, now Colin Kaepernick has decided that his parents are perpetuating racism. His parents are bad. The utter ingratitude and soul sickness that has to be attendant on you, the child of an adoptive couple who made you successful, who gave you opportunity, who brought you into a new world where you were able to thrive, flourish, become an NFL player, which is, by the way, not an inexpensive thing. Okay, to actually end up playing in the NFL, that usually requires that you go out and become part of a league. It requires that your parents travel for you. It requires all sorts of sacrifices that your parents made, aside from the normal parenting sacrifices, which again, adoptive parents make heroic sacrifices to even take someone else's child and raise that child as their own. Adoption is an act of tremendous charity. To then turn around and crap on your own parents publicly on CBS is one of the great acts of ingratitude, honestly, I've seen. Except that it's mirrored by so many people in our society who basically say that all of the traditions of the past are bad, all of the wisdom of their grandparents are bad, their parents are stupid, their grandparents are stupid, all of society is stupid, and they are the only good ones. She's an ungrateful, spoiled, rather disgusting generation that looks to its own parents and violates one of the fundamental bases of, I think, all human civilization: honor your father and mother. And the Ten Commandments says honor your father and mother for a very good reason. Because peoples that tend to honor their ancestors are also people who have a future. Peoples that do not honor their ancestors as a traditional matter tend not to have a future at all. And that's particularly true, again, when you've been given pretty much everything by your adoptive parents. So here is Colin Kaepernick, he's been out of the headlines for a while. You remember that he was asked by the NFL to do a workout for a bunch of other teams, and he didn't even show up to the workout. And then every so often he releases a video of himself throwing a football, and he's like, why won't someone pick me up? Here he was on CBS Chicago talking about how he had a problematic household. He has an upcoming graphic novel titled Change the Game. This comes after his pathetic Anna DuVernay directed or produced documentary on Netflix in which he likened going to the NFL Combine to an actual slave auction. Because as we all know, during a slave auction, the slaves ended up being employed to the tune of millions of dollars and made into national heroes, the slaves, right? I mean, it's exactly the same. The NFL Combine, slave auction, if you actually watch the clip from Netflix, that's exactly what it is. He literally morphs an image from the NFL Combine into an image from the slave auction. That's who Colin Kaepernick is. The most graceless, non-victimized victim of all time, except again for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, who are an actual prince and princess claiming victimhood. And so he went on CBS Mornings to promote his crappy new graphic novel. And here's what he said.
Growing up, I think still am a pretty introverted person. I hope it's true to form, and that's just kind of how I navigate the world.
It's his true high school coming-of-age story, his journey embracing his blackness, despite resistance from many, including his white adoptive parents.
I know my parents love me, but there were still very problematic things that I went through. I think it was important to show that, no, this can happen in your own home, and how we move forward collectively while addressing the racism that is being perpetuated.
He's getting what roles, his mom asked?
Oh, your hair's not professional. Oh, you look like a little thug.
Your mom said that to you.
Yeah. And those become spaces where it's like, okay, how do I navigate this situation now? But it also is informed why I have my hair long today.
So his mother is apparently a terrible person because she told him that he shouldn't wear his hair like Allen Iverson, in the impression that people might have a bad impression of him. Well, Colin Kaepernick is spewing garbage again, but your talk needs to be pure. In fact, you need pure talk. Now, the simple fact of the matter is that you are paying too much money. If you're with AT&T, Verizon, or T-Mobile, you should instead head on over to Pure Talk because it'll save the average family over $900 a year. That is correct. You can save $900 a year on your wireless bill and still enjoy ultra-fast 5G service. Get unlimited talk, text, and plenty of data for just $30 a month. Pure Talk is so sure you're going to love your service, they're backing it up with a 100% money-back guarantee, so you got nothing to lose. Stop paying a fortune to Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile. Cut your bill in half with Pure Talk. Their U.S.-based customer service team makes the switch super simple. Switch on over to Pure Talk in as little as 10 minutes while keeping your phone and your phone number your first month guaranteed risk-free. So what exactly are you waiting for? Go to puretalk.com, enter promo code Shapiro, save 50% off your very first month of coverage. That's puretalk.com, promo code Shapiro. I've switched all my business calls over to Pure Talk. You should do the same. And again, if it's good enough for me, it is definitely good enough for everyone else. Go to puretalk.com, enter promo code Shapiro, save 50% off your very first month of coverage. Pure Talk is simply smarter wireless. Restrictions apply. See site for details. Well, all of this is unholy garbage, but you know what you need in your life? More holiness. You actually need more God in your life. And this is why you should try out Hallow. Just like physical exercise, daily spiritual exercise is critical to your well-being. Hallow can help you maintain a daily prayer routine. It's filled with studies, meditations, and reflections rooted in Judeo-Christian prayer practices. You can pray alongside Mark Wahlberg, Jim Caviezel, even some world-class athletes. You can access the #1 Christian podcast in America, The Bible in a Year, with Father Mike Schmitz on Hallow. You know, I'm not somebody who keeps Lent. I'm an Orthodox Jew. But for tons and tons of people, it is a spiritual, meaningful time for Christians to abstain from luxuries and more deeply embrace their faith. And Hallow can be an amazing resource for you. Listen, I've always encouraged Christians to go back to church and to get more involved in their faith. Hallow can make it happen for you. Set prayer reminders, invite others to pray with you, track your progress along the way. Try Hallow for 3 months free at hallow.com/Shapiro. That's hallow.com/Shapiro. HALLOW.com/Shapiro. Get more spiritual on a daily basis with Hallow. Try Hallow for 3 months for free at hallow.com/Shapiro. So he's now writing graphic novels about how terrible his own parents are, and then he's going on national television to publicize how terrible his parents are. And again, this is Colin Kaepernick is a stand-in for an entire generation of people who think this way about their parents. An entire ideology that suggests that this is really what we should do, is we should dissociate from our own parents and we should rip our own parents publicly. It's not unique to Colin Kaepernick, as we'll get to in a second. It also happens to be an absolutely obvious profit-seeking move from Colin Kaepernick. As per usual arrangement, it's social justice in the name of bucks for Colin Kaepernick. Again, to understand what Colin Kaepernick is doing, I think what you first have to understand is that Colin Kaepernick's adoptive parents have basically stood behind him every step of the way, even when they disagreed with him. So there's pretty good evidence that his parents were not big on the kneeling protest, but it doesn't matter because apparently Teresa and Rick, his adoptive parents, wrote the following regarding the quarterback. Quote, Colin is carrying a heavy load. He is following a difficult path he truly believes in. He is putting his entire future and possibly his life on the line for those beliefs. As his parents, it pains us to read articles and tweets saying his family does not support him. This could not be further from the truth. We want people to know we are very proud of our son and admire his strength and courage in kneeling for the rights of others. Right? That's what they had to say when he was kneeling, even though there was fairly good evidence from sort of the inside that they were not in agreement with his generalized message. Of course, they stood by their son because he is, in fact, their son. Okay, and, of course, here is Colin Kaepernick with his mom, circa 2016, being very warm toward his mother on public. You don't see this sort of stuff anymore very often.
You have a family that you love, but you know you don't look like. And at a young age, I understood that was different. I didn't understand what that meant. So as I got older, it was something that developed, and as my identity developed and my place in society and my understanding of that developed. My parents and my family had to develop as well. And I think that's just been a constant journey for us. But it's been one that we've worked through, and we've always been very loving in the process. And, I wouldn't do it with anybody else.
Okay, those last few lines are the key, right? Every teenager, every young adult experiences gaps with their parents. This is a normal part of aging into adulthood. But do you navigate that with love and with understanding, or do you write a graphic novel about how terrible your parents were because they once said something that you didn't like when you were 13 years old? By the way, again, there's a far cry from Colin Kaepernick circa 2013 when he was putting out Instagram messages congratulating his parents and actually saying quite nice things about them. Quote, "Happy anniversary to my parents. It amazes me that you've been together since you were 14 and married for 38 years now. I didn't ask the Lord for a perfect example, but he gave it to me anyways. I love you both with all my heart." That's when Colin Kaepernick was a good person. That is before the activists took over Colin Kaepernick's life. And again, there is something to this that is broader and deeper. You'll recall when Barack Obama, when he was running for president in 2008, the Jeremiah Wright scandal came out. The fact that the president of the United States, then senator from Illinois, that he sat in the pews of an overt racist and anti-Semite for literally 20 years and then named his book The Audacity of Hope after a speech given by Reverend Jeremiah Wright. Jeremiah Wright is a kook and a nut and a wild-eyed conspiracy theorist, and Barack Obama sat in his pews for literally 2 decades and apparently never noticed. It was all a surprise to him. And then he had to give a major speech, you recall, talking about why he had sat in the pews and making some excuses quasi for Jeremiah Wright. And there was one part of the speech where he went out of his way to slap the people who raised him. Because if you remember Barack Obama's story, it's quasi-similar to Colin Kaepernick's in the sense that he had a father who did not raise him, black father who did not raise him, and he had a white mother. And then the people who actually raised him were his maternal grandparents. His maternal grandparents actually raised Barack Obama. And you'll recall, going all the way back to 2008 and 2008 race, Barack Obama made a statement in his speech where he said, "I can no more disown Jeremiah Wright than I can my white grandmother, a woman who helped raise me, a woman who sacrificed again and again for me, a woman who loves me as much as she loves anything in the world, but a woman who once confessed her fear of black men who passed her on the street and who on more than one occasion has uttered racial or ethnic stereotypes that made me cringe." And this basic notion that I am perfect and my parents are terrible, and that's an excuse for me to have made the overt choice as an adult to sit in the pews of Jeremiah Wright is because my white grandmother, who spent all this time and effort on me, she actually, she had some bad things about her. And those bad things about her, now that kind of makes her the same as me as an adult making bad decisions to opt into sitting in the pews of an overt racist and anti-Semite. That was Barack Obama's take in 2008. And in the end, it's all self-justificatory. That's all it is. It is Colin Kaepernick deciding that he has a thing to push. And the thing he has to push means that he can run roughshod over his parents. There is something really disgustingly perverse, again, about a culture that urges people to throw their parents under the bus. And when I say urges, I mean that this is like a real thing. If you go on TikTok these days, if you go on the TikToks with the youths, what you will find on TikTok is a bunch of videos, for example, of LGBTQ educators telling small children, "We will be your parents. Dissociate from your parents. Your parents want the worst for you. Your parents are going to be upset with you. Your parents don't like you. Don't navigate problems with your parents. Don't attempt to negotiate with your parents. Don't maybe listen to the wisdom of your parents. Maybe think that maybe they have something to teach you. Instead, what you really should do is you should rip on your parents. That is the most important thing. Just leave them. Stay away from your parents. Any movement that urges you to disrespect your parents and divide yourself off from your parents is a bad movement by definition. Use that as a rubric. Any movement that tells you that overt disrespect for your parents, as your parents, not disagreement, you're allowed to disagree with your parents, but overt disrespect, attempts to humiliate your parents unless they are full-on abusive, that any attempts to do that are good and that you have sort of an added credibility in doing that, that is a bad movement. That is essentially a cult. We become a very cultic country and a very cultic civilization in which you are taken away from your father and mother by perverse ideologies and you are morphed into a widget on behalf of those new ideologies. And it really is a sickness. And it is a great evil that has descended upon civilization when people take into their hearts the idea that your job as a human, part of your job, is to not only define yourself in contradistinction to your parents without taking any of their wisdom, but to overtly then attack the people who raised you. Something really bad about that. Alrighty, guys, the rest of the show is continuing right now. You're not going to want to miss it. We'll be getting into the mailbag. If you want your questions answered in the vaunted Ben Shapiro Show mailbag, then you must become a member. Become a member. Use code Shapiro at checkout. Get 2 months free on all annual plans. Click the link in the description and join us.